Alright, so in this video, I'll be replacing the Traxxas TQI receiver on my Traxxas X-Maxx because the receiver that I got with the truck in the box is actually faulty, and instead of ordering a new one, I will be installing the Dumbo RC receiver since I have it in spare. So I'll be installing the X6FG version, which has a gyroscope in it, and I have the 6-channel transmitter. So this is what I'll be installing, and I'll remove the Traxxas TQI system. Now a quick comparison between these two radio systems. The Traxxas TQI is basically a 2-channel radio system that we get from the box, whereas the Dumbo RC is a 6-channel radio transmitter. On the TQI you can connect a Bluetooth module at the rear and pair it with your phone to change some of the settings like the power and the drive mode. And you could also manually change the settings by entering the program options. On the other hand, the Dumbo RC radio is also programmable. You can mix up the channels and experiment with it and do a lot of things. One thing that I like about this radio over the Traxxas TQI is that on the Dumbo RC radio we get dials to change the trim and dual rit for the throttle and steering, and you can also reverse the channels from the button over here. Whereas on this radio we only get the trim knob for the steering and we don't have any knob for the throttle, although you can enter the program option and set this multifunction knob for the throttle dual rate or throttle trim. To be honest, I would have liked to use this radio, but since I have that flashing green LED error and I cannot drive the truck smoothly, I have no other choice but to replace the receiver and switch to this Dumbo RC radio. And not to forget, the range on this Dumbo RC radio is way better than the TQI transmitter. If you're not sure, check out this video where I've tested this radio transmitter on my ATXL and I was able to drive roughly about 400 meters or so. So the moral of the story is that the Dumbo RC radio is definitely a lot better than the Traxxas TQI. So let's get to the truck and replace the receiver. Alright, so in order to remove the receiver from this sealed receiver box, we have to remove a couple of screws, and for that we will need the 2.5mm hex wrench. So the screw that holds the wires in place, which has the antenna tube connected, we have to remove these two screws over here, and then also remove the two screws which hold the receiver box in place, and they are located over here. One is over here and the other is on this side. So if I pull the battery tray, we can see the screw over here. So let's remove that. And then with the 1.5mm hex wrench, we will have to remove the grub screw which holds the antenna tube in place. So now I can remove this plastic part which holds the wire underneath. Actually, first let me remove the antenna tube. This plastic part which holds the antenna, it has a piece of foam underneath which helps with the waterproofing. And here we have some grease or waterproof chemical which helps seal the receiver box. Now the trickiest part is this, where we have to remove the receiver cover because it's not very easy to get this off. So the trick here is to remove the screws which hold the top cover completely. So we have to take the screws out. So this screw has to be removed completely from the top cover, because if you have this screw halfway, then it will basically obstruct the gap and you won't be able to pull the cover outside. Similarly, I'll remove the screw on this side. So even trying to remove the screw all the way is a hassle. So then I've removed the top receiver cover, and here is the Traxxas TQI receiver. So to remove the receiver, I'll use this tweezer because there is a adhesive tape through which the receiver is stuck. So first I'll remove all the wires. And pull the antenna wire. So here is the Traxxas TQI receiver. This receiver costs $40, whereas this Dumbo receiver is just $10 or so. And since I have these in spare, I'll be using this. So it's a 6-channel receiver, like I said, and it also has a gyro in it. Here we can see the size difference between the two receivers. So let's install the Dumbo receiver. So first I'll cut a piece of foam tape and attach it to the bottom of the receiver. I'm not going to stick it directly because I'm going to make sure that this receiver is bound to the transmitter, because once this is installed, we won't be able to press this button on the receiver, which is required to bind and change the orientation of the gyro. Now, because this receiver cannot transmit telemetry data like the voltage and the temperature along with the motor RPM, we don't need the voltage and the temperature sensor wire, so we can just leave it lying around in the receiver box. Now the receiver box on the X-Maxx is such that we have more space horizontally rather than vertically. So the TQI receiver was placed like this, but since this receiver has a gyro, and if you'd like to use the gyro functionality, you will have to mount this receiver facing towards the front direction of the truck. And since the antenna wire is also from this side, the wiring may be tight. So let's see how this goes. Now, because we have a cooling fan on the motor, we do have the power connection for that, and we can connect that on any other channel because it only requires power. We don't have any signal for the fan connection. So the servo will be connected to channel 1, followed by the ESC wire, which will go on channel 2. And this is the wire for the cooling fan on the motor. I can connect this on channel 3 or any other channel. Avoid connecting this to channel 5 and 6 because if you want to control the gyro, then there might be some interference if you connect this on channel 5. So better connect this on channel 3. That's if you're not using the auxiliary channels on the radio transmitter. And before I stick the receiver, like I said, I'll make sure to bind the receiver to the radio transmitter. So I'll connect the batteries and make sure to turn on the radio transmitter. And I'll make sure that the trim for the throttle is centered. I'll power on the ESC. Now at this stage, my radio is already bound to the receiver. However, if you want to bind it, then all you have to do is just hold this button on the receiver and the receiver will flash, and once the light is solid green, it means the receiver and the radio are bound. And if you want to test the gyro, you can slightly increase the knob for the channel 5 and lift the car and just gently touch the receiver to make sure that the gyro is working. If it's not, you will have to hold the button on the receiver for a few seconds and then the gyro will be enabled again. Or if you want to disable the gyro from the receiver, first set the knob for channel 5 to 0%, and then on the receiver press the button 3 times so that the gyro can be disabled. So the LED on the receiver will flash, and now if I increase the channel 5 knob and try to move the receiver, you will see that the steering is not moving anymore and the gyro is disabled. Similarly, if you want to enable the gyro, make sure to set the channel 5 knob to 0% and then press the button thrice once more. So the red and green LED will flash, which means the gyro is activated. So if I now increase the channel 5 knob to, let's say, 10-25%, and if I move the receiver, you can see that the steering has some response. Alright, so at this stage I'll turn off the car. And now I'll stick the receiver in the box. Actually, before I fix the receiver, I'll have to route the antenna wire. And once more I'll have to use this tweezer. One thing to remember is, on the X6FG, we cannot reverse the direction of the gyro. So it's very important to make sure that the receiver is facing in the forward direction of the truck or the car. So you can see how tight the fitting is for this receiver in this receiver box. The antenna wire is almost crippled over here, but it's not a concern. Now we don't have to connect these wires, so if you want you can remove them or just have it lying freely in the receiver box. It's not a problem. Just make sure that the wires are snug and then install the receiver cover. And then fix the antenna tube. And make sure to secure the screw all the way so that there is no gap. And one other important step which I'm about to mention is to recalibrate the radio and the ESC, because the endpoints on this radio transmitter will be slightly different. So just to be on the safer side, I will recalibrate the ESC. So then to calibrate the ESC, I'll make sure that the trim for the throttle is absolutely 0 and the dual rate or the throw is set to 100%, and the switch for the throttle is at normal. So if you have read the manual for the VXL ESC, the calibration is pretty simple. All you have to do is just hold the easy set button for a few seconds, and once the LED blinks, you'll have to hold the throttle all the way, then reverse and neutral. So I'll hold the easy set button, full throttle, then reverse, and neutral. So the ESC has been calibrated. So that is how you install a Dumbo RC receiver on the Traxxas X-Maxx. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If your XRT or X-Maxx has the green LED blinking on the ESC and you cannot get rid of that error, then unfortunately your Traxxas receiver is damaged and you will have to replace it. Rather than replacing the receiver, switching to a radio like this is a better option because you get a lot more channels, a lot more flexibility, and a lot more range. That's all I had to share in this video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys very soon.